She's an award-winning YouTuber and best-selling author obsessed with helping you go after the life you want.
I like it.
Join her as she seeks out the stories and strategies
Give me every little detail.
of extraordinary people who found success.
I'm going to get emotional. Oh my God.
Welcome to Detail Therapy with Amy Landino.
Good morning, good life. Welcome back to Detail Therapy. In this episode, we're getting into the details about reading way more books. It is time to level up your game and get more books read in 2021. We're going to talk about how I make time to read even when I'm really busy. Yes, it's possible to do both. And some of my favorite reads. I'm going to actually make some recommendations of what I read in 2020, books I recommend that you pick up. If you're new here, hello, my name is Amy Landino and I will be your host. I'm a success coach and founder of Gatlu House, a resource dedicated to helping you go after the life you want. You can see all of our work, including the show notes for this podcast, at detailtherapy.online. So it is the holidays and we are enjoying this little bit of time. This is like that break moment, you know, when it's like, okay, what's under the tree has been opened up for the world. We're enjoying it. We're loving it. We're spending time with loved ones. Hopefully just the loved ones that you live with, staying safe, staying healthy. But also, like, we're still not going back to work just yet. And we're still not totally ready for the new year, even though we're super amped about the possibilities of a new year, right? And so I thought this would be a good time to talk about reading more. And I know that this is top of mind for everyone. We always say that, right? I want to read more. But I'm hoping that the ambition is connected to a real life goal for you or a real resolution of some kind, something that you actually care about developing in your life so that the actual goal of reading more often will be connected to something that means something to you. Because otherwise it's just sort of an arbitrary goal, right? Like, what's the point? That's so silly. We need to want to read more because we want to be more educated. But what is behind that? Don't worry. Our next episode of Detail Therapy is going to help you with this ton if you're super interested in crushing those New Year's resolutions. Spoiler alert. So stay tuned for that. But if on your list of goals and resolutions is that you need to read more in order to achieve your vision for success, that is what this episode is all about. So I'm very excited to share that with you. And by the way, if you're keeping track of your goals in anything, I highly recommend that it is the Good Morning, Good Life Planner. I don't know if you've heard, it is newly released, refreshed, totally updated and upgraded and undated, by the way. Totally undated 12-month planner with stickers, a bookmark, and lots of great places to track your goals and make sure you start every day on your terms so that you can actually make time to go after those goals, including and not limited to time to read. So that's just like a bonus tip. I actually have lots of other good tips for you, but that is definitely a good one. Starting your day with a book is a good one, but definitely check out gatlu.store. That's GATLUW.store in case you haven't gotten your updated and upgraded planner for 2021. I know that if you need a planner for a new year, just like I do, it's obvious every single year we've got to have that place where we can go to and make sure our visions come to life and our words get down on paper. Go snag it. It's over there, gatlu.store. I will link to it in the show notes as well. So let's get into this. How are we going to read way more books? I mean, way more. Hopefully it's a very specific metric for you, right? How many books did you read this year? Think about that. You know, was it 0? Well, yeah, this is going to help you with way more. But if you feel like you could have picked up at least double-digit books this year and didn't, then this episode is going to be so helpful for you. And I'm going to tell you this as a person who has developed every single year. I read a number of books, but each year I do struggle to hit my goal, and I've continued to hack my way into figuring out what are the mental blocks, what are the obstacles that are keeping me from making that happen, and how do I get to a higher goal every year. I actually believe that setting a goal for reading is important to me in general. It's not always directly connected to specific or SMART goals, but it's because I know for a fact that every time I pick up a book, whether I hate it or love it, I learn something in that process. And it seems like every time I pick up a new book, there is something in it that is directly relevant to what I'm dealing with in that moment. And I can learn something and I can take it into the next conversation or the next brainstorm or the next moment. And that's huge to me. I always want to be learning. I want to be a consistent learner throughout my life. So reading books consistently is very, very important to me in general, if for nothing else, to always be learning, to always be growing. So I do like to have a growing goal every year. Last year, I think I was only able to get to like 25 books. I had said 52, the classic like one book a week goal, and it didn't work out. But my goal of 50 this year is not shaking out to be as horrible of a difficulty to get to. And I think it's because of a lot of these tips that I have to share with you. So let's start with tip number 1. And that is, I want you to check out goodreads.com. If you have never been to goodreads.com, this is actually one of the social networks I have been on for almost the longest. I think the same year that I joined Twitter, I joined goodreads.com. So you can actually see every single book I've ever read on that profile. And now it's like an author profile. I'm not just a user, I'm also a creator. So that's really cool too. That was definitely a moment for me when I was like, whoa, I'm not just a reader, I'm an author. And then I had to tell them that my last name is complicated and that they should kind of like merge my account. Anyway, long story short, check out goodreads.com. Okay. Here you're going to compile your bookshelves, like your virtual bookshelves. Okay. The books that you want to read, the books that you are reading, and the books that you have read. And this is a great little tracker. They also give you a reading challenge. And so, of course, everybody right now is setting their reading challenge for 2021. And you can actually set your reading challenge anytime you want, I'm pretty sure. But I always set mine at the end of the year. At the end of 2019, I set the goal of 50 books. So this is kind of a good tip because if you're one of those people that needs outside accountability, this is where you can make that public commitment and people can comment and say, yay, how exciting. This is, X number of books. That's a great goal. Everyone's just really supportive of each other, whether you have friends over there yet or not. If you start to review some books and start adding some books to your shelves and start liking statuses, you'll start to see that this is definitely a community that comes together. But what I really love is, like I just said, seeing what other people are reading in real time and their recommendations. Not just making certain friends, it doesn't really matter, just seeing what people recommend. What are they giving 5 stars to? What are they leaving an actual review of? Because that's how you know they really care, okay? This isn't like the review on Amazon where someone's annoyed that they even bought the book, so they go and review it on Amazon because Amazon literally tells them, hey, what did you think of that book you bought? And then like the author is devastated because the person maybe picked up the wrong book for them and they left a scathing review. I feel like that same thing happens on Goodreads, but it happens because the reader is dedicated to the craft of reading and really care. Like, you don't think I'm going to go now post that review on Goodreads. Lots of people leave reviews on Amazon. Goodreads is really a culture of readers who give the benefit of the doubt to the author and will tell you what's up with that book and how they feel about it. So I just feel like the reviews are a lot more trustworthy here because it's not necessarily buyer's remorse as much as it's like, yeah, I just really could have gone either here nor there about it, So definitely a great place to get some recommendations, have a culture of reading friends around you, and to just see the beautiful pictures of the books that you've been reading right there in front of you collected on your virtual shelves. I just think that's really fun, especially if you're somebody who doesn't like to buy a lot of books in physical form and want to keep things as digital as possible, but still feel like you're surrounded by amazing insights that you've been able to pick up. So first and foremost, if you are saying I am dedicated to reading, go over to goodreads.com and sign up for an account. And even if it's just for you and just checking out some reviews and logging your reads, I highly recommend it. Feel free to invite me to be your friend as well. Anytime I can catch up, I try to add all of my friends to connect with me on Goodreads. And check out what I've been reading in the last 11 years. Like, it's all there. My second tip is to get a Kindle. The reason I say this is because I believe that if you're going to make the most of reading as often as you can and to find pockets of time when you can do more of it, you need a device that is only for reading. Because when you have, let's say, Kindle on your iPhone, I will say that that's a great hack, and I will still use that as a tip because I think it's a great one. But we get distracted and we start looking at Instagram and things. So there's a lot of self-control that goes into that. And if you're already struggling to read more often, you don't want to bump up to that obstacle as much as you possibly can. So for me, I don't take my phone to bed at night, and I like to read before I go to sleep because it does a great job of knocking me out, quite frankly. Get a chapter in or two, whatever, depending on how tired I am, and then fall asleep. It's like the perfect marriage. So definitely get a device because your phone should be sleeping someplace else. But even if that weren't the case, you want to be looking at something that's ideally not lit by blue light. You want something that's almost like reading like paper. If you also want to make it easy to keep track of your notes and also, save a few trees by not ordering a bunch of physical books, if you get what I'm saying here. The other reason why I desperately recommend a Kindle is because then you can take advantage of free access. Okay? I don't want you to buy a book that you're just kind of considering, but you're afraid to buy because you don't know if you're going to love it. And then you skip the whole process altogether. When you have a Kindle and you go to Amazon and you check out a digital book, let's say you're looking at an ebook, you're like, okay, $9.99, no big deal, but am I actually going to read it? Download the free sample every time. I never, ever, unless it's a book that I just know that I'm going to read, I never order a Kindle book, a Kindle ebook, until I have read through the entire sample. Because it's so easy. You just go to Amazon instead of spending money very quickly and in the moment when you don't know if you're actually going to make the most of it. You just say, send this sample to my Kindle. The next time you pick up your Kindle, it opens up. When you finish that sample and you're like, oh my gosh, what's next? There's a quick button that says, you can download this book, you can buy this book, click here. As long as you're connected to the internet, it'll work just fine, which it should be if it's going to be able to get that sample anyway. It's got to sync up. And then that's it. You keep on reading from there. The downside to reading the sample is that you can't use the highlighting feature in Kindle to save your notes, but I still feel like that's a good trade. I'll go back and highlight the stuff that I read previously to make sure that it's there, but not buy the book before I am absolutely sold on it. Long story short, I think just having a Kindle is worth the investment because it's possible to read so many more books without actually having to order hardcovers, find places to put them, and overall just clean out the books that you don't read anymore from your shelves. It's a lot easier to do that when you have a Kindle. I keep a lot of books on my actual reading device so that I can catch up with them, but most of the time when I'm done with them, I will completely get them off of my device, but I know I can pull them from the cloud anytime I want because I own them. So there's just so many reasons why this is an efficient way to read, and I do recommend having a Kindle. There are Kindles at multiple price points. We'll leave some options in the show notes, but the biggest thing is just getting one that's one of those paper whites or whichever ones are least likely to emit blue light and keep your attention in the wrong way. We don't want that. My third tip is Audible. I am not a person who thinks you have to read a book to be a real reader. As long as you are absorbing the content, you can move into life a better, more educated person. And that is truly all that matters. I don't want you to be somebody who doesn't read because it takes time and it feels hard for you. I'm a slow reader. I know this about myself. It bothers me, but I also know that the value of a book the most of the time, as long as it's worth it, and don't worry if it's not worth it, we've got solutions for that. I'll tell you in a little bit. it's going to bring me so much positivity in my life that it is worth it for me to lean into a couple of things that are not ideal about my reading style. So with that in mind, Audible is a very, very big way that I get books read. I am an avid reader, but if I'm multitasking, then I want to be reading as well. And that is where Audible comes into play. You can also download samples to make sure that you like an Audible experience before you buy into it. And obviously there's a membership for Audible, which definitely saves you a lot of money instead of having to buy an audiobook, which can get really pricey. Paying for a membership is great because you get credits, and most books only cost 1 credit. And this goes for Kindle as well. If you did not like a book, you can return it. It doesn't matter if it's actually digital, where we actually do see that digital information products often don't have a good return policy because you get the access to the information so easily. Amazon allows you to say, this Audible book sucked, and get your credit back or get your money back. Those are some big advantages to their membership program. Now, remember, you're going to get so many credits. And I don't know if you've ever been like me, where you pay for the membership for Audible and you forget to use it for a little while, and suddenly you have a ridiculous sum of credits. So there is a downside to not using your credits. You want to make sure you are paying for something you are actually using. But here's the advantage. You're reading a book when you cook. You're reading a book when you walk. You're reading a book while you do laundry, while you clean the house, while you drive. And all the while, you're not risking your life. You are not walking and reading at the same time like they say Stephen King would do. And that's how he would read for 5 hours a day. You can just listen to the narrator, and hopefully the narrator is the author, which makes it an amazing experience. And you can intake that information without having to put complete halt on your day. And this is the beginning of a conversation I want to have about romanticizing reading. A lot of times I hear people saying, I am so excited about reading because I just want to make that time for myself. Like you make it sound like you're going to get into a huge Mariah Carey bubble bath and have this amazing, huge hardcover book. And it's like old and like falling apart because it's like so vintage. And you've got your like glass of Chardonnay and the candles are around you. And yes, that's amazing. That sounds fantastic. Give me that every day of my life. But can we also get freaking real here? Like, it's not going to happen. So the romanticizing of reading worries me because we don't take in the content. We want to take in the atmosphere. So by allowing Audible to be in your life, you are starting to break down those barriers of what reading actually means to you. If the goal is to make me time, that's one thing. If the goal is to get as much information to move your brain and mindset forward in the direction you want to go, that's a totally different ballgame. So the romanticizing, we've got to stop. So here's my tip for that. Bring a book wherever you go. It could be that big bathtub. It totally could. But if you always have a book on you, then you will be able to soak up the information at any given time. So maybe you're waiting in line at the doctor's office or at the grocery store. You can either pull out your Kindle app, pull out your Kindle, or pull out a book and start reading instead of scrolling your phone. If you want to know how people read for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours in the day, it's because they find the minutes upon minutes upon minutes that add up. More on that later. I've got a fun little addition to this conversation to help you understand that a bit better. But if you don't bring a book with you anywhere, or if you never open up the Kindle app on your phone and you just go straight to Instagram and scroll, then you are not going to be able to find those minutes. The chances that you will learn something actually worth reading is much more likely when you pull out a book than if you just stare at Instagram, okay? I think we all get it at this point. Not very often do we look at social media and find out something new. We've literally heard and seen it all. It doesn't mean it's not worth checking out, but it is not always the thing that is going to move your life abundantly forward. My next tip is to read multiple books at once, and that doesn't sound good the way I wrote it. What I mean by that is to have multiple books going at one space of time. So the way that I make this work for my brain so that it doesn't get everything all mixed up is by having 3 or 4 different formats going at once. It's usually 3, and here's what it looks like. I will either have a Kindle or paperback version of book in my life at any given moment. I will have an audiobook in my life, and I will have a daily reader in my life. Most of you know that every single morning for the last 2 years, I've been reading The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. So that is one page that I read every morning. And so that book takes me a year to read. Totally not going to be fast enough to get me to my goal, but that's just a standing book that I always want to read because of the type of philosophy it teaches me and how I need it every single day. Now, the Kindle paperback situation, it's usually Kindle for me. Or when I say paperback, I mean hardcover as well. It just depends on the book. But when I'm actually scanning pages with my eyes, I try not to get too confused in my brain. So I can't usually read a Kindle and a hardcover or paperback book at the same time because that feels like the same experience for me, and ideas might start to run together, and I don't want that to happen. Typically does not happen. So right now I'm reading a Kindle book. I don't have a physical book that I am reading at the moment, but I do have an audiobook that I am reading in the moment, and listening to the author telling me that story is a different experience. So I'm actually reading 3 books right now: a Kindle, an audiobook, and a daily reader. As I said, daily reader is going to take me a while. The audiobook isn't going to take me long at all because that honey is at 1.25 speed at all times. So let's get to the point and let me get the takeaways and walk away. And then the Kindle version is something that I break out in the middle of the day when I sit down to read for 20 minutes before bed, a little bit in the morning, at a point in time when I'm doing nothing for whatever reason. I don't find myself standing in line anywhere lately, but I was at the doctor's office the other day, and in the waiting room, I did not scroll social media. I read a chapter of a book. There you go. 1 chapter down, done. So I highly recommend multiple books at once. If you feel like this is too much for you, I totally understand that. But what I feel it does for me is it helps me to not be so picky about the information. I find I'm a slower reader if it's the only book I've got versus reading for the intention of taking away the most vital information. And when I've got multiple that I have going at one time, I'm better at not romanticizing the reading experience. So again, it helps me with that anti-romanticizing thing that I am a big proponent of. My 6th tip is to quit the books you're not enjoying. Now, for those of you who are finishers like me, you're going to have a harder time with this. I get that. I'm reading a book right now that I'm like, ooh, this is better than I thought it was going to be, but it's also a book I feel like I don't necessarily need. So I'm grappling with whether to quit it right now, but I have reached the 50% point. So I'm still trying to decide. But when you're reading a book and you're like, I get that this is important, but I can't even. Just quit. It's okay. That book might come into your life at a better time. That book may go away forever. Regardless, it doesn't matter. Get rid of it as fast as possible. If you read some of it, it counts. Go tell Goodreads, I read this book and I'm over it. And that's okay because your opinion and your assessment of it is on your terms, and that's fine. You need to quit the book so that you don't lose your love of absorbing and learning great information, because this is going to cause you to stop reading altogether, to absolutely not hit your reading goals, and then you're back to square one. Do not let the bad eggs, which by the way, these books can be raving reviews based on everybody else's opinion, but you just don't like it, that's okay. You got to quit it. This is another reason why I love book samples. Go with your gut. Download the sample. If you don't think that the author did a good job of coming up with the best sample to reel you in so you don't pay for it, ditch it. It's over. My 7th tip is to get the main points of the book without all the hours of reading. So this is definitely a shout out to Cliff's Notes, except for it's a modern day Cliff's Notes. This app that I want to recommend is has been a partner of Amy TV in the past, but is not sponsoring this episode of Detail Therapy. I just highly recommend them if you really want to get in to the reading scene, but you feel very held back by your ability to read and you just need a bit of a quicker way to absorb the most important and vital books in the nonfiction space. Blinkist is a great app that brings you the knowledge from top nonfiction books. So you can read or listen to the key ideas. They basically just take the big pillar points of the book from best-selling nonfiction titles, and you get it all in 15 minutes. Whether you're reading or listening on this app, Blinkist, you get it all in 15 minutes. So this is the ultimate starting point for someone who is a self-proclaimed non-reader. If you are a reader and you've just not been great at getting back into it or picking up titles, I don't necessarily recommend this one, but it's completely up to you. It's really what the culture is for you. I feel like sometimes when you take the high points out of a book, you lose a lot of important context, which is why this one is a great recommendation to get the wheels going, but it's not really going to brief you on all of the things that are involved with the things that you can learn in these books. So anyway, I guess it's just everyone's decision. I wanted to make it an option for you, but it's certainly an option if nothing else. Like if you just cannot bring yourself to spend 4 hours, 5 hours of your life with a piece of content, then 15 minutes is better than absolutely nothing. So that's my opinion. Now, tip number 8, go ahead and romanticize reading. Just don't even listen to me and make it the most romantic thing of all time, okay? And what you can do in this case is just create a designated reading space. Maybe it's a beautiful chair with a side table that's perfectly sized for a bowl of popcorn and a glass of wine, and you post up undistracted to read a chapter of a book once a day. You know what? It's up to you. Maybe this is your thing, but I actually don't do this very often because I find that I can't find these pockets of time as easily as I can find smaller pockets of time throughout the day that ultimately end up in more pages read. Now, if you like the romantic idea, do you, baby boo? Set up that space. It's always great to set yourself up for success. And we are talking about that literally. Set your setting, okay? And make it happen. Tip number 9, start a library membership. What I love about these technological times is that you do not have to borrow books physically from the library anymore. You can now have a library membership, but borrow digital versions of books. So again, going back to that Kindle, you can borrow books in ebook form from the library. And you can return it. You don't even own it. If you want to go get it again, you can borrow it again. Or if you decide it's good enough, you need to own it, go ahead and order it. But look at that. Like that's another free way to absorb this amazing information that reading provides you. And my last tip is number 10. And I just wanted to share this. I got this one from the Harvard Business Review. I'm just going to read it to you. Reapply the 10,000 steps rule. This shout out to Stephen King again. Get ready. A good friend once told me a story that really stuck with me. He said Stephen King had advised people to read something like 5 hours a day. My friend said, that's baloney. Who can do that? But then years later, he found himself in Maine on vacation. He was waiting in line outside a movie theater with his girlfriend, and who should be waiting in front of him? Stephen King. His nose was in a book the whole time in line. When they got into the theater, Stephen King was still reading as the light dimmed. When the lights came up, he pulled his book open right away. He even read as he was leaving. Now, I have not confirmed this story with Stephen King, but I think the message this story imparts is an important one. Basically, you can read a lot more. There are minutes hidden in all the corners of the day, and they add up to a lot of minutes. In a way, it's like the 10,000 steps rule. Walk around the grocery store, park at the back of the lot, chase your kids around the house, and bam, 10,000 steps. I just love this one. I will link to this article so you can read the other tips that they shared in HBR, but it's so true. How do you get to 10,000 steps if you only usually take 5,000? You add more steps to your day. If you want to read more than one page of a book per day, you've got to add those pages one by one, minute by minute to your day. And suddenly you could hit your goal. Okay, so before I go into some recommendations, I'm going to make my public commitment to you. If you're one of those people who says, yeah, I need to make a public commitment. I can do it on Goodreads. Maybe I'll post it on my Instagram. I'm going to tell everyone what my public commitment is. I want to be there for you, and I'm to show my support. I will tell you that I am going to finish 50 books by the end of 2020. Currently, I have completed 34. I should be at 36 by the end of the week, if not in a couple days. And I have a lot more time on my 2-week staycation at the end of the year that I have dedicated to those other books. And I do know that one Daily Stoic is going to be marked as read on the last day of the year. So I'm progressing a lot better in these last couple of months. It was a little hard when Lucy was gone and things started changing and my momentum changed. But I am going to read 50 books by the end of the year. And then public commitment number 2, I will finish 100 books next year. I know it sounds like an arbitrary number. I know a lot of you guys are going to be like, Amy, whatever, you're too busy for 100 books. I get it. I also think that. But I'm committing to it because there have been so many ups and downs of 2020. But many, many, many of my ups came from the moments where I sat down and said, I need to read this book. I think it can help me with what I'm going through right now. And it did. And when you get that assistance and you can skip a bunch of crap and say no more often and go to the part where you're a little bit more successful, a little bit better mindset wise and make things happen, I'll pick that every single day. So if I can read twice the number of books next year to get twice the amount of insight, to be twice the amount productive, to be twice the vision of where I think I can be right now. I need those visionaries in my life to let me know what's possible. I can't do it by myself. I would never claim to. And so the only way to do that is to go out and freaking get it. So that's my public commitment to you. Detail therapy, listen up. I need you to hold me accountable. Come over on Instagram. Let me know you are holding me accountable for 100 in 2021 because I need you. Leave it on our latest Instagram at Details Podcast. Okay. Finally, I'm going to share my top 10 favorite books of 2020 in case you're looking for anything you want to pick up. Don't worry. It's actually quite a variety of content, so don't check out if you don't necessarily want to read nonfiction. There's definitely a couple things in here. So here we go. Number 1, Jessica Simpson's memoir, Open Book, was a page turner. I can't even tell you. Maybe it's because I grew up in the 90s and I just found her fascinating. But everything from alcoholism to struggling with eating disorder to turns out John Mayer is a terrible human. Like, I just could not get enough of this book. So I highly recommend it. Number 2, Queenie by Candace Carty-Williams. I loved this one. I feel like I got so much insight around a Black woman in England and what it was like to live her life. Now, this is a fiction book and certainly one that gave me a lot of information that I never would have thought of because I could never be in this woman's place and really understand racism the way that it took place in her life and in ways that I never would have imagined. I definitely recommend this if you are someone who has been culturally held back and need to better understand what it's like to be in someone's place like that. This was a very good one, and it definitely was an interesting storyline to keep you interested as well. Number 3 by Ramit Sethi, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. This is an excellent book. I recommend it if you need to get your finances together. And we love to talk about that kind of thing over at Amy TV and here on Detail Therapy. But Ramit just breaks it down. Like, he just gave some unbelievably good tips, very actionable, and just silly ways that we might be spending in our life that we don't need to. Bank fees. Check it out. Highly recommend it. Christine Carter wrote a book called The Sweet Spot, which is number 4 on my list. Honestly, this was just a fun audible to have on in the background as I was cleaning house or as I was just tidying up or just doing random things, chores, because I feel like it was talking about those things, but in the way that was more motivational and just how do you keep your life together and feel like you've hit your sweet spot. I really enjoyed this one. Demi Moore's memoir is number 5 on my list, Inside Out, another fascinating celebrity life. Just, I don't even know where to begin. I mean, you will not believe the life that this woman has had. Unreal. Number 6, Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. I was pleasantly surprised with this one. I decided over the summer I needed to pick up a fiction book again, and this one really was way better than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be so overblown, and it was excellent, absolutely excellent. Number 7, Untamed by Glennon Doyle. Where do you even begin with Glennon? She's such a light, and she's so brilliant, and if you need a little bit of motivation, you're going to get a lot more than you asked for by reading Untamed. I do recommend this. Number 8, Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. I listened to this on Audible, which was great. He's an amazing narrator. I think it's just like the English accent. It's an enjoyable experience, let's just say. But he spent time studying with the monks, and I think this ties really well into the philosophy stuff that I like to read about and learn about. And I just feel like it helped drive home a lot of those high points of making sure that we put in perspective what actually matters and what it means to go after the life we want in a way that we can actually control and our mindset. So definitely recommend that one. I think our community will love it. Number 9, How to Take Smart Notes by Sanka Arns. I really think I did not pronounce this name properly, but this is by far and away my favorite book I read this year. How to Take Smart Notes. It will blow your mind. It will make you realize, oh my gosh, all this note-taking I've been doing has been so siloed and is not helping everything that I work on as seamlessly as it should. And it is what turned me on to Roam Research, which is the new note-taking tool that I'm using. And it is helping me keep all of my ideas in a place where they help each other grow. So I'm never really starting from a blank slate, which is amazing. And my 10th recommendation is The Practice by Seth Godin. This one's so good. It's exactly Seth Godin's style as per usual. He writes really consumable books. But if you've ever seen Seth's blog, you know that he is very concise, and each of the chapters in The Practice is very concise. Like, we're talking maybe a few seconds long. So a great Audible read, but you could pick it up either way. They're going to be really short chapters, which I think makes something a lot more fun to read because it feels like you're progressing, even though there's like 230 chapters. It's because they're all extremely short. But this is going to help you a ton with your mindset, especially as a creator, to stick with it and make your dreams happen because you've got to get in the practice. I will link to everything I referred to in the show notes, including and not limited to a couple of other books I recommend, like one to boost your morning routine, Good Morning, Good Life, and one to boost your video presence, Vlog Like a Boss. I was the narrator for both of the audiobooks. You can get it in Kindle, you can get it in paperback, whatever you see fit to improve your 2021. We'll leave links to that in the show notes. Thank you to everyone who went over to iTunes to leave a 5-star review of this podcast. You have no idea how much that truly supports our work. Today's shout out goes to Chelsea Eicher 92. Thank you for your 5-star review and super kind words. They mean so much to me. You have just won a Good Morning, Good Life 12-month planner. All you got to do to get that baby in the mail is head over to email us at hello@detailspodcast.com to claim your gift. If you would like a chance to win a planner or another something special gift, head over to iTunes and leave your true and honest review. I may select you at random. That's all for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it as always. Remember, subscribe for good vibes, kiss the ones you love, and go after the life you want. See you next time. Cheers.